Hello, good morning everyone. We're back again. It's English Lessons Live with Mr. Phillips, and today is our reading lesson. Now, hopefully someone at home saw the announcement that I put on the YouTube channel last night. For today's reading lesson, and for all the reading lessons, you're going to need a copy of the story that we're reading. Now, in the description below, I've put a link to the story, so you can click on it and go and download it. But you have to have an account for lovereadingforkids.co.uk. It's completely free, but you have to register and sign up. So if you've not already got yourself a copy of the story, please make sure you go and get one now. Now, you might have it on a different device. You might have it on an iPad or something next to you. You might have it on the same laptop and you're moving between the two screens. You might have printed one out and you have a paper copy like I do here. Whatever you're doing, please try and make sure you can see a copy. If you really can't see and you don't know how to sort it out, message me at the end of this live stream and we'll have a little chat. You can get to me on rsa.year6@3-saints.org.uk and we can have a little chat about how we could solve that in the future. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to do our reading session for year 1 and for year 2. Now, our reading session is broken into 4 separate parts. I'm going to show you those parts now. Those parts are predict. And in the predict section, that's when we decide what we think is going to happen in the text before we read it. Number 2 is clarify. That's when we try and figure out what the words mean in the text, especially tricky words. Number 3 is question. And that's when I ask you some questions about the text. And number 4 is summary, when we try and summarize everything that we've read. So we're going to be moving through these 4 different chunks today, and that's going to make our reading lesson up. So first of all, now hopefully you've got a copy of the text, is we're going to predict. Now we're going to predict what is going to happen in this text. So I'm going to actually grab you off here. Oh, you're on the move. And I'm going to swap the camera around so you can see the text. So this is the text we've got today. It's called A Fox Called Herbert. And you can actually see there the word rabbit has been crossed out and it actually says fox. So they've corrected that. A Fox Called Herbert, and we can see this rabbit there and he's looking towards some foxes playing football there. We've also got 2 rabbits there holding hands. So that's the front page of our book. Now we're going to use that to predict what we think happens in this text. We've just got the title, A Fox Called Herbert, and those pictures. So first of all, why do we think the word rabbit is crossed out and replaced with fox? Who do we think the characters in those pictures are? And what do you think are going to happen to them during this story? Now, it doesn't matter if your prediction is wrong. What's good is we just have a go. Now, if I say, oh, I think aliens are going to come down and start running around. Now, that is a prediction, but there's no evidence for that in the text. There's nothing from the story that we can back that up with. So we want to try and come up with sensible ideas based on what we can see. And when we do our prediction, we always start it with, I predict that. So I'm going to write that down. If you've got a piece of paper, you can split it into these 4 sections, just like I've done here. And what you might want to do in your prediction section, you can write your prediction. If you've not got a piece of paper, it's absolutely fine. Maybe have one for Thursday. Instead, you can just think. So I predict that. So what do we think might happen in this book? Well, I can see a picture of a rabbit looking towards some foxes and they're playing football and he's not playing football. So maybe it's a story about a rabbit who wants to play with the foxes. So I predict that this is a story about a rabbit who wants to play with the foxes. Who wants to play with foxes. And maybe people tell him not to play with foxes, or maybe the foxes don't let him play. Have a think now, and maybe you can pause the video and have a little think about it. And if you've got a piece of paper, maybe you can write what your prediction down is. Write down what your prediction is. Have a go at what do you think this story is going to be about? A fox called Herbert. And remember to start it off with, I predict that. Now, don't worry if it's wrong later on. That doesn't matter, okay? So now that we've predicted what we think this story is about, we should probably read it. So should we read the story together? So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to flip the camera around. I'm going to have a little bit of read. If you've got a version of the story with you, you can be reading along as well, okay? Here we go. Ooh. A fox called Herbert. Herbert loved foxes. There he is in the playground watching the foxes play. He looks really keen to join them, doesn't he? Herbert loved foxes so much he made himself a pair of red ears. Oh, that's good. So he's made himself some ears so he could look a little bit like a fox. Rabbit's ears aren't short and pointy, laughed Herbert's mummy. Reluctantly, Herbert let his ears look rabbity again. So his mum said, oh, that's silly, that's not the right kind of ears for a rabbit. And so then Herbert changed his ears again. I wonder how he feels about that. Doesn't look that he looks massively happy, does it? Oh dear. The next day, Herbert painted himself red with the help of his little sister. There we go, we can see him painting himself red there. Little sister helping him. Then they played Find the Fox. So she's covering her eyes and he's going off to hide. They're going to play Find the Fox. Uh-oh. Herbert's mummy was cross. Look at the mess you've made, she said. Promise me you will be a good rabbit. Herbert helped to clean up. You can see all the mess he's made. Now, that is actually all we're going to be reading of the book. We don't read the full book during a reading lesson. We just read what's called an extract, so a very small chunk of the book, okay? And that's all we read. Now, if you want to listen to it again, pause and then you can go back and re-listen to it, okay? If you've got your own copy, obviously you can be looking at it whenever you want. So the next section is clarify, and that's when we look at any difficult words that might have popped up during the text. Now, I've come up with 3 that I thought were quite tricky. So the first word was the word pair. It said that he made himself a pair of short red ears. The next word was reluctantly. I'm even looking how to spell it. Reluctantly. I want to spell it wrong for you. Because it said, after he was told to take off his short, pointy red ears, that he reluctantly took them off. And then the final word that I found is the word rabbity. It describes his ears as rabbity. That's another word I thought, oh, might need to clarify what that means. So let's start off again. What do you think the word pear means? It's not the pear that you eat, like an apple or a pear. It's not that. It said that he had a pair of short red ears. If you think you know, write it down on your piece of paper. Well, a pair is to mean to have 2 of something, isn't it? So you might have a pair of ears. So you've got 2 ears. You might have a pair of glasses and you've got one eye hole for each. That's why they're called a pair of glasses. You might have a pair of shoes. he's got 2 shoes. If you're in the classroom and someone says, oh, you need to get into pairs, you need to get into groups of 2. So it means a pair is to have 2 of something. And when it says he had a pair of short red ears, it means he has 2 short red ears. The next word is reluctantly. It says in the text, reluctantly, Herbert let his ears look rabbity again. So if someone does something reluctantly or feels reluctant to do something, what does that mean? You might say, the children reluctantly came inside after playtime, or they reluctantly ate their cabbage and broccoli. If you think you know what reluctantly means, pause the video and write it down. So reluctantly means to not want to do something. If you're reluctant, you're a little bit unsure and you don't think you really want to do it. So the children reluctantly came inside after playtime means they don't really want to do it. Or the children reluctantly ate their cabbage and broccoli means they don't really want to do it. And in our text, it says, reluctantly, Herbert made his ears look rabbity again. It meant even though Mum had told him to do it and he was going to do it, he didn't really want to do it. So that's what reluctantly means. And then the last word, we've just said it again before. The next word is rabbity. It says he made his ears look rabbity again. Well, I've never heard of the word rabbity, and I've taught in year 6 for quite a while. Rabbity, well, I wonder what that means, for his ears to be rabbity. If you think you know what it means, pause the video and then write it down. So rabbity is it's not a made up word, but it's a made up adjective. Obviously we know the word rabbit because he is a rabbit. So it's saying that by making his ears rabbity, he's making his ears like a rabbit. We might say his nose was a bit rabbity. His nose was like a rabbit. The way he walked was very rabbity, like a rabbit. I suppose you could do that for different animals. You might say his nose was a bit elephanty. It's very informal, but it's quite a nice way of describing something. His eyes were a bit catty, like a cat's eyes. So rabbity means like a rabbit. So now we've read through the text, we've done our prediction, and we've clarified 3 tricky words from the text. Hopefully some of you might have your own prediction written down, and you might have what you thought some of those words meant. If you weren't right, it doesn't matter. Maybe you can correct them, as long as you remember for next time. Pair means to have 2 of something, reluctantly means you don't want to do something really, and rabbity means like a rabbit. Now we're going to move on to some of our questions. So we've looked at the text in quite a lot of detail now. We're going to look at our questions. So here's my first question. So what I do is I say the question to you. I don't write it down, so you've got to be really good at listening for this bit. So my first question is, what 2 things did Herbert do to make himself more like a fox? What 2 things, I don't want 1, I want 2. What 2 different things did Herbert do to make himself look more like a fox? If you think you know the answer, pause the video, and for number 1 in your question section, write for me 2 things that Herbert did to make himself look more like a fox. Okay, what were those 2 things? Well, number 1, he made himself some short pointy ears. So he made himself some ears that looked like a fox. Should we find that bit in the text? Let's have a little look. Where was that? Not on that page. Not on that page either. There we go. The next day, Herbert painted himself red. Oh no, that's wrong. There's one. Gave you the other answer then. Herbert loves foxes so much he made himself a pair of red ears. So one thing he did to make himself look more like a fox was he made himself some fox ears. And then, I kind of gave the answer to you then a second ago, didn't I? The other thing he did was he painted himself red because that's the colour of a fox. So those are two things he did to make himself look more like a fox. We could write that for number one, couldn't we? So number one, what two things did he do to make himself look more like a fox? He made small red ears and painted himself red. Those are two things that he did. Now, if you knew the answer, you don't necessarily have to write it down. We are doing a reading lesson, not a writing lesson, so you might be more comfortable in just saying the answers out loud, pausing them, saying the answers out loud, and then seeing if you got it right. If you're in year 2 especially, you might want to have a go at writing the answers down and then checking with me to see if you got them right. Ready for question number 2? Question number 2 said, why was Mummy Rabbit cross? Why was Mummy Rabbit cross? Have a little think. Go back and have a look at your text if you've got a copy. If you think you know the answer, pause the video and write your answer down to number 2. Why was Mummy Rabbit cross? Okay. So, where does that happen in the text? Does that happen near the beginning? Or does that happen near the end of the text? Well, Mummy Rabbit being cross, I remember, happens right at the end of the text, doesn't it? So again, let's have a little move of this. Let's go right to the end of the text. Here we go. It says, Herbert's mummy was cross. Look at the mess you've made. Right. So why was Mummy Rabbit cross? Well, she was cross because Herbert had made lots of mess, or the children had made mess. The mess was the red paint everywhere, wasn't it? But we probably don't need to say that. Why was Mummy Rabbit cross? We can write that for number 2. The children had made lots of mess. It's not a very well-formed M, Mr. Phillips. Let's do that properly, shall we? Made lots of mess. Lots of mess. Beautiful. Okay. Doing really well. We've got 2 more questions left. 2 more. Next one. This one's a bit of an opinion question. The next one says, why do you think Herbert wanted to be a fox? Why do you think Herbert wanted to be a fox? Now, this is a little bit like our prediction question. There's no one set right answer. As long as you come up with a good, sensible idea, then it'll be okay. Now, we might have lots of different answers, so don't worry if you don't hear your answer now. But why do you think Herbert might have wanted to be a fox? Well, I'm just having a little think from my own brain and thinking what I've seen. It said he loved foxes, and every time he saw a fox, they were playing fun games. So maybe Herbert thinks that it's really exciting to be a fox, and he's a little bit jealous. So, or maybe he feels that he won't be allowed to join in with the foxes if he isn't a fox himself. So, have a little write down on your piece of paper for number 3 why you think Herbert wants to be a fox. I'm going to say, because I think he wants to be a fox so he can play with the others. He can play with the other foxes with the other, I'm going to go a little bit into my other section here, foxes. I think he wants to be a fox so he can play with the other foxes. That's why I think he wants to be a fox, and I think that is a sensible answer based on what we've seen in the text. Last question. Now this is a bit of a tricky question, maybe more aimed towards the year 2s, but everyone can still have a go. The next question says, how else do you know that Herbert likes foxes? So apart from the fact that it says he likes foxes, and apart from the fact that he makes himself ears and paints himself like a fox, how else do we know he likes foxes? That's really tricky. Have a little look through your text and see if you can find it. If you do, pause, write your answer down, and then come back to us. So how else do we know he likes foxes? Well, let's have a little look. We want to find some evidence in the text. We could say that in the picture he's always watching them, but more often we want to see if we can find evidence in the text rather than in the pictures. Now I said I want us to ignore that one, so apart from the fact that it says it there, how else do we know? Maybe we could say he's sad when he's not allowed to pretend to be a fox. That's a good way of knowing that he likes foxes. Maybe we could say he plays a game called Find the Fox, so he likes to pretend to be a fox by playing fox games. I think those are two really potentially good answers there, aren't they? So we've got two potential answers there. Number one, he gets sad, or he is reluctant to stop being a fox or stop pretending to be a fox, or he plays a game called Find the Fox. So in his imagination, he is pretending to be a fox. I like the first one. I'm going to go with the first one, I think. So, pardon me, it's right down here, so I've got to really scrunch down. So, how else do we know he likes foxes? He is, I'm going to use this word up here, reluctant to stop pretending. Oh, dearie me. Not good handwriting. There we go. Whew. We've done really well answering those 4 questions. So now we've predicted, we've clarified, and we've answered questions. Look how busy that board is. Full of work. And I've got one more section before we finish. And the last section is the summary section, which is before we leave, can we summarise everything we've looked at today? And your summary task today is, can you sum up, or can you tell me the whole story of everything we've read in 10 words or less? I'm going to have a little go. So, Herbert the rabbit wants to be a fox, but he can't. Oh, I've got over 10 words. Right, I'm going to have to make it, I'm going to have to summarise it better. I'm going to have to do it in less words. Herbert wants to be a fox, but he's not allowed. Herbert wants to be a fox, but he's not allowed. That's going to be my 10-word summary. See if you can think of your own 10-word summary, or you might want to change mine a little bit. Herbert wants to be a fox, but Herbert wants to be a fox, but is not allowed. Herbert wants to be a fox, but is not allowed. There we go. So, everyone, we have now predicted what we thought was going to happen. We've read the text. We've clarified some key vocabulary. We've answered some questions about our text. And we've summarised our text. I think that is a really good reading lesson. Well done. For next time on the reading lesson, if you've not been able to get yourself a text off the internet from lovereading.co.uk, make sure you message me on the email and we'll figure out a way of helping you do that. If you didn't have a piece of paper this time to split into 4 boxes like mine, have a piece of paper next time, and that'll be really, really helpful, because every single reading lesson is split into those 4 categories like that. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow for a little bit more writing. See you later, guys. Bye.